Welcome to Confronting Injustice. I'm your host, Linda Solomon. My co-host, James Watson, is not here with us this morning, but we'll try to work through it anyway. As you are aware, Confronting Injustice is a nonprofit organization that is concerned with supporting those individuals who've been wrongfully convicted and then others who've been adversely impacted by the criminal legal system. And so it's a pleasure to have you here because you've been doing some incredible work with returning citizens, young people, helping to transform lives. And so it's great that you're here. Can you introduce yourself and then tell us a bit about yourself, and then we'll delve into TPP.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me, by the way. My name is Bobby Icavello. I am the Director of Community Outreach for the Transformational Prison Project, which I'll get into it a little bit later. It's a restorative justice organization. I am 36 years old, born and raised in Revere, and I'm formerly incarcerated as well.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for that introduction. So you're the director of a program. Can you tell us about that program and how you became involved with it, please?
Sure. So the Transformational Prison Project, also known as TPP, it's a restorative justice organization. It really encourages accountability and healing. TPP tries to change the way the criminal system, communities respond to harm.
Okay.
And we do this by facilitating restorative dialogue among impacted parties. And this is in the community, it's in prison, jails, juvenile facilities, to corporations, to education. We're pretty much everywhere. And how this kind of started is kind of how I got involved, right? Back in 2010, there's a prison called MCI Norfolk. So It's the biggest state prison in Massachusetts. It has the most long-termers and lifers. And there was a big fight, what they want to call a riot. Okay. One of the youngest members of the prison got med-flighted out and almost died. So the older men in the prison got together and said, hey, we got to do something to help our community inside prison. I mean, they were all incarcerated, right? So they came up with something called restorative practices, restorative justice. They all got trained by an outside entity to be facilitators, circle keepers in this process. It ended up blossoming. It started off with one retreat. It blossomed into 13 different programs that hit 6 different prisons. And it really changed the demographic inside the Department of Corrections in Massachusetts.
Let me ask you a question before you go on. So you said that the men got together and initiated this. This was not something initiated by the institution.
No. And the men actually ran it. It was all run by incarcerated individuals, ran this programming inside there. And I think that is something, that's a great point that you made, is because individuals trust individuals that are incarcerated, right? It's all about who's been there for so long or who's the impact players. And now you get these impact players in the prisons and in the streets together in one space. They can really influence a whole community and institution, right?
Right, absolutely.
So that was the idea, and it worked.
Okay, that is interesting. So it started in prison and then it spread out to the community.
Yeah. So years later, a nonprofit blossomed off of this, right? And majority of the people in the program, especially the leaders, were lifers. The idea of it was that when individuals come home, they actually have a job and can practice these things that they learned and bring it to the community. And years went by and juvenile laws changed and people started coming home, whether it be wrongful convictions or anything, right? And people started coming home. I came home October 22nd, 2019, and I got linked right up with the organization. We kind of revamped it a little bit, and it's been up and running since the beginning of 2020. Wow. And yeah, we're pretty much in a lot of different spaces. And I want to add that everybody in leadership position besides one person is all formerly incarcerated.
Really?
So our executive director served 28 years in prison. He's a juvenile lifer, still on lifetime parole, and runs the organization, right? So it's all lived experience actually doing this work.
That's interesting. Now, for people who are not familiar with restorative justice, I mean, there's I guess depending on the circles you walk in, you might not be, but I want our audience to be really clear about what restorative justice is.
Okay. Yeah, and it's hard to explain, right? Because it's I can give you the definition of it, but I want to be clear that in order to understand restorative practices or restorative justice, you have to actually be in a space to experience it.
Right.
So restorative justice is based on indigenous practices. It's been going on since forever, and we got rid of it. And the reason of it is that back in the day, individuals used to, when a harm was committed in their community, in their culture, in their whatever you want to call it, they got together as a community.
Right.
The impacted people, the people that did the harm, community members, family, leaders, all got together and sat in a circle-based circle where they built a safe container and then actually did deep work on that harm and their trauma to get to a point where that harm can be resolved, right? So that's the same practice that we use now. We start off every session with a grounding, we do a check-in, question round, check out, closing. But the most important part of it is building a safe container. So everybody in that circle space gets it. There's not one person leading it, right? Everybody's equal in that space.
Okay.
So they get to one by one say how they're gonna go upon these rules to build this safe container. So I'll write it down. Everybody confidentiality. Then when we're done, after everybody's done saying what they need, we go by one and make and say, can you agree with everything that's on there?
Okay.
Then we proceed, right?
Okay. So you establish norms.
Absolutely.
It's interesting, you know that my background is in restorative justice. I believe in it wholeheartedly, and I often refer to it as magic because things happen that you just wouldn't believe. And so the community building is what it's about, and it has the potential to transform lives. There's no doubt about it. So I wholeheartedly believe. Now I'm interested in a number of things, but let's talk about before we talk about your work with youth. You said that you use restorative justice in ways that may not be typical. For example, in organizations, medical field. Like, can you just share with the audience about some of the other work that you've done before we circle back to?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the main things that we work on is reentry, but I know we're going to get to that as well.
Right.
But I think restorative practice can be implemented in every system and every part of community, whether it be the medical field, whether it be educational, everywhere. It's a practice that can be used in it. So in the past, we have done it in the medical field, we have done it in higher education, and we have done it in corporations. So for example, like when a corporation is harmed, say, like recently with one big corporation, it's a lot of confidentiality, so I don't want to say the name, but due to COVID, that there was a lot of firings, and then they hired people again, so there was a lot of breakup inside that organization, like people weren't trusting it. So we come in and actually build circle and space to kind of bring everybody back, build community back together, right?
Yes.
So you can do that whether it be in the medical field, because there's a lot of distrust between individuals that are doctors or nurses or in that field compared to the community, specifically Black and brown or poorer communities, right? Like there's gonna be that distrust. So we went inside there and actually ran circles on that. And it's not easy, but it works. The main thing is you gotta trust the process.
Right.
Right.
Which is really interesting. So thank you for sharing that. Now, your work with young people, can you just share about, like, you go into youth detention centers? And what do you do there?
So right now, TPP, we are in 2 juvenile facilities. And when I say juvenile facilities, I mean it's jail or prison for individuals that are between the ages of 12 and 20. So you literally can have a 12-year-old in there.
Really?
But so what we do is we're in 2 institutions. We're in Harvard Street, and we're also in Canterbury Street. So what we do is we go inside the actual facility, the jail. It looks like a jail as well. We go onto the units and we run restorative spaces with the young people that are incarcerated, also with their staff as well. And we try to build community, repair harm, and also dig deep into individuals' traumas. I think it starts when you're younger. You said earlier, right, that this work can be transformative. For myself, it didn't just changed my life. It saved my life because it was built off my deeper trauma I had when I was younger, right? So if we start at the young age, right, and try to fix these, excuse me, not fix isn't the right word, but try to repair these harms, right? While they were younger, that maybe they will have a chance, right, in life. So we're in 3 different units in the facilities. Actually, on Friday, we actually went to another facility up in the Northeast. We're actually going to start going out to that county as well. And we went to 3 different units in there, and it was amazing. You know, our young people are our future, which most people don't understand. And some people write them off, which I know firsthand. I was written off when I was younger, when I was getting in trouble, right? But they're our future, and they can shape things. And they're impact players in multiple different angles, which people don't understand. The older you get, I hate saying it, so you fade out, right? Like even no matter where it is, these new people are the ones that are gonna make things happen or not happen.
Right. It's interesting, and I totally agree with you, and we need to invest in them. And it makes a statement about a society that does not invest in their children. But it's about emotional literacy, is what I hear you saying, addressing the trauma, and being in community when you do that. And my question to you is, what is for people who may not know, this tremendous value of being in community? Can you speak to that for a minute?
Yeah, I mean, community is everything. I remember somebody, when I first started doing these restorative practices, somebody asked me, what is community to you? I had no clue, because I didn't understand it, right? It's everybody inside there. Like that saying where it takes a village to raise it, that's true. Like whether it be religious, whether it be education, whether it be every walks of life is in our community, and we have to do this together. We're too much divided. So for me, it's like community is everything, because your family isn't just your blood. It's who you grew up in, what neighborhood you're in. And that's where, I mean, even you're just coming from Boston area, right? You're proud about where you're from, right? But you don't even know, some people don't even know their neighbors, or they're divided, right? I think community is everything. Community is what will change the world, change our lives. You know, if we get closer and do things together and stop being so divided.
It's interesting, in my understanding from what you're saying, and just my experience, being in circle creates community.
100%.
And it,
without a doubt, because I'm sorry to cut you off, but and see, the reason why there's division is because we don't understand that we are connected in so many different ways. No matter what we look like, no matter where we're from, what our profession is, or what our religion is, right? When we get into a space, and a safe space where there's no mandated reporters, where we can actually speak about our truth, our past, our traumas, or just build, you connect to the next person. You're like, oh my God, I'm connected to this person more than I would ever think. And it just is a chain reaction. Everybody says something, and that's what brings people together.
Absolutely.
And it's just like we are in a culture where we don't talk about our feelings, whether it's you're not supposed to cry, right? You're not supposed to be like that, right? And we got to break those barriers, especially when it comes to young people, right? So,
You know, it's interesting. I was talking with this Dr. McLary, who's been doing this kind of work for about 30 years, and he made a statement: young people have a fire in them, and if we don't control that fire, they'll burn the village.
Yeah, 100%.
And so I think what we see happening in the news is an example of us not controlling, not providing what they need to control that fire that they have in them.
Absolutely.
You know, so I'm thrilled that you're doing this work, and they're fortunate to have you and TPP in their life, because if not TPP, what other services would be impacting them in such a profound way? And then the other thing too is, when they learn restorative justice skills, these are things they can take home and practice at home. Like, this is not just like a one and done.
Yeah,
Can you speak to that? That's generational.
When you learn restorative practice, this is something that you can bring into your household and actually do it with your family, your mother, your father, your children. And it's a skill. It's a deeper understanding of individuals, right? So like, this is actually, you can become a restorative facilitator. You can get up to the point where you're a coordinator or a director in certain things and really impact your community, you know? So it's a skill. And when I go inside these facilities, I also one big thing is I connect with them because of my lived experience. I've been through the system my whole entire life. But another part of it is I try to break down to them that you got to find out what's good for you. And when you dig deep into all this stuff and get these emotions out and figure out where all this stuff is coming from, you figure out what you're good at. Like, you got to think about it. Like, there's young kids that are literally making like these big gangs and controlling things. Imagine if they put that towards a business, but they just don't have the resources to do that. So I explained to them that when I was younger, I was very active in street life and in negative activity, but I was always good at connecting with people. I know who had what, I know who was from who, and I always was able to finagle and get people together, bring people apart, whatever I needed to do. And now that's what I do as a profession. Outreach for an organization because I know how to connect to people. You gotta find out what you're good at, and it's digging deep past your trauma, because you gotta understand that there's a lot of individuals in every walks of life, but especially when you're dealing with young people in Boston that have serious trauma. They're watching people getting killed. Their friends are dying, right? And I think the perception of the outside world is, hey, let's be tough on crime, let's make more laws. Laws don't, and more time doesn't help a community. Figuring out what the root cause of that community is, figuring it out. When somebody picks up a gun, they're not worrying about how much time they're doing. They're picking up a gun because they're scared and they want to die.
That's right.
You know, so it's like digging deep, like, why do you feel like you're gonna die where you live at? Like, why? You know, it's like going deeper into that. And sorry that I went off a little bit.
No, you didn't go off because,
listen,
I am like you, passionate about that, because I recognize when people have no hope, or like you were fortunate in that you recognized your skill set, right? But there are many young people, and even adults, who haven't discovered what they're good at yet. We've been socialized to kind of conform, and people lose themselves in that. And so I think the young people just need an opportunity to be real and talk about their fears and their trauma. I don't know anyone who hasn't experienced some level of trauma.
Of course, everyone.
And I don't know many people who address their trauma. And I often say trauma doesn't dissipate. It doesn't go away on its own. It doesn't evaporate. Trauma lives in your body. And, having the opportunity to work with these young people, and even returning citizens, to deal with that is major. You can't even put in a dollar amount on it. So can you talk about your reentry work, your work with men and women who are coming out of prison, because the system doesn't do a good job at reentry?
No, absolutely not. I say this because I went through it, right? I served 12 years, came home, and there was nothing there for me. First, people got to realize that when you're incarcerated, you get re-traumatized while you're in there, every single day. To be
post-incarceration syndrome is real.
Yeah, and people don't really realize that
Absolutely.
Until you come home. Because I did so much work on myself, and then when I came home, this emotion, these feelings, it was just overwhelming. And I understood why people might come back, because they can't handle it. I'm not saying that that's okay, but you really usually run to the things that you're more comfortable with, right? So I figured out my reentry, other individuals coming home, the only people that were there for me were formerly incarcerated people. It blew my mind. Like, I could pick up the phone and they understood what I was going through. Nobody feels that.
Yeah.
Then I realized real quick, we're working with an organization that I'm able to talk to them, and my executive director is able to talk to them because we're working.
Right.
But if he wasn't working, he's on lifetime parole. He wouldn't be able to talk to individuals.
Now listen, and if you're on lifetime parole, you're not supposed to be around people who've been incarcerated.
Only in a working profession. So it blew my mind that the people that for years, I grew up in there. These people I know, individuals I was incarcerated, are my family. I know them more than my family because I was a kid that grew up in there.
Right.
That's who taught me how to be positive and productive. And you're trying to say I can't be around them? Or they can't be around me?
Well, that's a lot. That's a lot. That's
So we built something, right? We built something, and we learned that, like, I didn't know how to use an iPhone. I wasn't around when it was made. And I was one of the youngest people that came home. And just imagine people that did 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right? So we linked up with our community, another community partner named Maverick Land and Community Service out of East Boston. They had an issue with their it's an immigrant community in East Boston. Whether it be the Italians coming out or the Colombians now, so it's always a language barrier. So they wanted to get digital literacies for their population, and we teamed up with them, like, hey, we want to get digital literacy classes for our population as well, returning citizens or people that are formerly incarcerated. So we linked up on a grant, and it happened 2 years ago. And so what happens is when individuals come home, they get free digital literacy classes. Usually the last class is 15 people. They get to be in this space where they learn, and they get to be in this space with peers by doing a program that they're not going to be violated, where they sit there and they learn how to use a computer. We have it once a week. They also get stipend to do it. They get a computer, and it also builds community, right?
Absolutely.
So in January, hopefully it'll be our third time doing it.
Wonderful.
And we're hoping that we get 2 classes from January to March to, so we can run 15 people and 15 people, right? And get 30 this year. The first year we got 21, graduated 19. The second year we got 15, graduated 15, and now we're hoping to shoot for 30, and we realized real quick that we need each other, because the re-entry out here is a scam. It's a lie. They said that they have resources for us, and they don't. And I hate being blunt in saying that, but it's like, it's just, I don't even know where all this money is getting funneled into, because it just blows my mind.
Well, listen, it's really important for people to understand this. When oftentimes, when men and women get out of jail, they don't even have an ID.
No.
Now listen, the system knows. If someone's locked up in the system, there are no shades of gray about who they have locked up. Why would you not have an ID when you get out? Why would it take some people months to get an ID? And without an ID, no job, nothing. Like, you can't even prove who you are.
No, not at all. You can't even get to a bar. Like, without an ID, right? You can't get anything. You can't, so it's little simple things. And just to add on to that, and you can shut me down if you want, if I'm talking too much, but my reentry was different because I have no problem with, I'm very open. Like, I am responsible for the crime that I committed, but I did not commit a life sentence type crime, a second or first degree, and that's what I was charged with and sentenced with. I overturned my case and I got a manslaughter, and I pled guilty to it, and I came home. So when I was on my reentry of coming home, they're supposed to get you an ID before you come home. The reason why most people don't have it is when they come home is because they're about to be on parole or probation. I pled out to 14 in a day, meaning I have no probation, no parole. I wrapped my whole time up, and I did that on purpose. Because I know now I can fight the administration, be like, no, I want my ID. And I went to these caseworkers that's supposed to help me, and I said, hey, listen, I want my ID. And they go, you know what, Bobby, you're lucky you're even going home. That's what they said to me. I'm lucky I'm even going home.
And you're asking for an ID.
My ID, that's what they're supposed to do. So what I did was I wrote to the head of the administration, the staff and DOC, and said, listen, this is what's going on. I need my ID. They did whatever they had to do, and I fought to get it done. But most men don't have the time and or the capability, because they're going to get violated if they do. Now they're going to get attacked. I can write you a ticket. Now your parole is gone. Now you're in solitary confinement. And that's how it works. They could throw me in the hole. I was going home no matter what. That's why I was able to do that. But that's very rare that people get it.
See, so the system, it's unfortunate, but that's the reality. This is not secondhand information, primary source information. We have about 5 minutes left. I'd like you to speak to people about, I think that, we're socialized to believe that if you're in jail, you're guilty, or if you don't deserve a second chance, or whatever, I don't even know. But I know that there are a lot of false narratives out there, right? What is it that people should know about your work or about young people that they would not know otherwise, because they're so disconnected from?
Yeah, I would say this, right? That restorative practices. Most people, when it comes to the criminal justice field or dealing with young people or whatever it may be, they say it might be soft. It's a way to a deterrent not to go to prison. Restorative practices is the hardest thing I ever had to do in my life, is sit in a space and talk about my trauma and really know what true accountability is. Because true accountability is actually fully understanding the harm that you committed in your community. Understanding the victims, your family, everybody that's going along with it. That's the hardest thing I ever had to do. Now, to truly understand that, if you don't believe in it, I just challenge you to come step into more space. And it will change your life, you know. And
absolutely.
And one more thing is that to add is that you know, especially you said about with the young people and people incarcerated. I'm gonna add one more thing about people incarcerated.
Okay.
Excuse me. Is that the idea is this: you commit a crime, and then you get punished for that crime. The punishment is you getting taken out of society and taken away from and putting in a place where it's not in society.
Right.
That is your punishment. You should not be re-punished while you were incarcerated, because all you are gonna do is make that person more worse than allegedly you think he might be.
Okay.
The point of it is to be rehabilitated, to come back into society so you can not only be a productive member, but also give back to your society. If there's no programmings or things inside there to change an individual, it's gonna keep on going around.
Right.
And most people have this perception that when you get in there, you should be punished while you were in there. That is what you're talking about, is torture. So you want to punish an individual and torture an individual while he's already in punishment? It makes no sense. That's why solitary confinement is something that is really horrible on individuals that are incarcerated. Individuals seriously have some serious trauma around that, and all that they do is just change the name of it. Instead of calling it solitary confinement, they call it the SMOO, they call it the WHO. They have all these names for it, and it's still there, and it's always gonna be there.
And I know people who've spent years in solitary confinement,
My
years.
executive director spent 10 years straight in solitary confinement. 10 years straight. And everybody that goes to prison goes to solitary confinement. Everybody. It's part of the culture.
Listen, many people probably don't know that going through the criminal legal system and then living in that environment, that toxic, causes mental health concerns.
100%.
I mean, there's no doubt about that. So you're being punished in a way that, like, psychologically, the post-incarceration syndrome is real. It causes you mental health, physical and mental health concerns just by going through that process.
Yeah, I just want you to think about it like this. Imagine you going inside your bathroom, right? It's your bathroom. When you go outside, step into a parking space. That is the size of a cell, a parking space. Now imagine you being inside solitary confinement for 6 months. 6, maybe a week, right? All you have is a toilet, a bed, and a sink. You're getting fed through a trap 3 meals a day, which the meals are horrible and small. And you're taking a shower every 3 days, because that's the law. Every 72 hours, they have to give you a shower. Then when you do leave, 5 days a week, they let you leave. If that, out the cell for an hour, you're in full restraints, meaning shackles and handcuffed. And mind you, every time they come in your cell or come out, you are strip searched.
That's incredible.
I'm sorry, my bad.
No. And I think people just need to know, because we have glorified television.
Yeah.
If people want to connect with TPP, or if they feel compelled to want to help young people, what can they do? How can they?
Yeah, you could definitely reach out to the Transformational Prison Project. We have a website. We also have social media. You can reach out to us. You can always reach out to me. And I'm the one that connects everybody, and we're always looking for people, but we are busy, and I'm gonna be honest with you, right? There's a lot of work to be done, so just look us up and we'll be there.
Wonderful. I thank you, Bobby Icarello.
Hey, so you got it.
But I thank you so much for being a part of Confronting Injustice, and I just applaud you for the work that you've done and the transformation that you've made in yourself, and then just your desire to give back and your passion is just incredible, and so I thank you.
No, I thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
All right.